we see the two contestants in front of us. And there we see our first glimpse of the day of Robert Gabriel Sava.
Robert Gabriel Sava, as we mentioned, candidate master from Romania. His classical and rapid rating are not that high, but when it comes to speed chess, his blitz is actually over 2,700 on chess.com, and his bullet is also over 2,700 on chess.com. So definitely a very experienced online chess player, and a lot more dangerous in these formats in there with his smile as well. He's in great spirits. This is probably the biggest game of his career and one of the toughest, if not the toughest opponents he has faced throughout his chess.
Yeah, I can guarantee it's the biggest game of his career. And you saw the nerves beforehand. He's just trying to keep himself calm. He's saying, you got this. You can do this. A draw would actually be a great result here for him as well as black. But yeah, of course, a draw with black against Daniil Dubov is a hard feat to achieve. So Anna, a Queen's Indian to start this game.
A Queen's Indian, indeed. Openings in chess have so many names. A lot of them are based on places or players. In this case, this is a very traditional opening, a very classical opening that has been around for a long time. But we see this early pawn push by Daniil, which is a pawn sacrifice, not a new idea, but it makes the position very dynamic. White gives up that pawn in order to free the central square for the knight, and that knight is ready to jump toward the black king with knight to f5 as well.
Yeah, this is quite an old line. Pawn sacrifices are Dubov's speciality, especially with white, and especially when he has fianchettoed his bishop. But yeah, this is very old stuff. I remember seeing annotated games from the 1980s in this, 1970s even, from this variation. But of course, modern computers have given more resources, defensive resources to black, more attacking resources to white, and Dubov is happy to just play on a pawn down as if nothing happened. Anna, soon he will land his knight on f5, maybe now, and he's going to go for an attack.
It could be the moment when he decides to jump there with the knight. That's the square that he was giving up the pawn for, this knight maneuver, while black's development on the queen side is still a bit harder. You see a lot of pieces crowded there in the top left corner of the board. The bishop comes out to f4. The knight jump is still in the air for white. Knight to f5 could be next.
Knight to f5 could indeed be next. I think the one move probably to avoid here is to capture in the center. That only allows white to make moves like that knight jump, and suddenly the tension between the queen and the other queen, the fact that the black queen is overworked defending the knight here, the bishop, I think black's position just falls apart. So more likely you have to focus on development. One typical move would be to develop this knight to the edge of the board, but at least it supports its fellow knight, which in turn supports the pawn in the center, so kind of clinging everything together. But he moves his knight the other direction.
And it's a mistake, and Daniil Dubov senses it immediately. His expression changed radically when he saw this move. He does not see the evaluation bar, but his inner evaluation bar says, this is a mistake, and I'm going to try to capitalize immediately on this moment.
Oof. Yeah, that was the biggest giveaway ever. Just the fact that Dubov leaned forward, suddenly looked super interested in the position. He was looking very chilled before. But what is the knockout? Is there a knockout blow on the spot, or does white just continue with the attack by bringing the knight forward? It might be something to do with some exchanges in the center. Anna, Dubov is calculating. Is he going to find something to seize a decisive advantage?
He's calculating. You can tell that the engine is running very quickly, the processor of these variations, and which one is the killer sequence. The evaluation bar screaming that there is something, that there is a killer sequence, but it doesn't seem to be that obvious, at least not to me. David, do you know what's the right way for white to execute here the advantage? Oh, we see Daniil Dubov has figured it out already, and he is giving up the knight for a pawn. It's a knight sacrifice, but when the bishop takes, he's not ready to capture on d5 with the pawn. Once that bishop moves, you can continue pushing the pawn, and that's a fork, attacking both the knight and the bishop. Oh, goodness me, everything will be hanging.
or everything's falling apart. That's just a temporary piece sacrifice. It's actually going to be a gain of material for Dubov. Black can't just give back a piece and survive. Black is losing much more than just a piece back. And that's just a knockout. Poor Sava, opening disaster. One complacent move, one careless move, and it's just over like this. Dubov, he's the Punisher. Anna, he is so ruthless. He sensed it. He beat me to it. I realized it was an option, but I was like, wait, there must be a way for Black to bail out. I checked the computer, and the computer said, totally winning, on the spot. Dubov finds it.
He found it immediately. He just made sure he ran through the calculations in his head and made sure that there is no defense here for Black. And it is the correct assessment. He knows it with his Grandmaster brain. For us, it's the engine too that supports that, yes, White's position is completely winning thanks to this temporary knight sacrifice. Now, Black has given back the knight. We see a trade on d5. This is equal material at the moment, but White is threatening to win material by capturing the bishop with a check, and then the c6 bishop would be loose.
Yeah, and not just that, but how else to defend? Okay, he does take the knight off. I was going to say also taking the bishop followed by the white bishop coming in, and it would have been skewering the black queen to a rook. Now there's a threat of taking that rook in the corner, which has just moved. But Dubov, can he amp up the pressure? Maybe just bring some rooks into the center of the board. Two bishops, and it's so open. Daniil Dubov, big advantage, but can he end it on the spot and win material? He goes in with his queen, lining up the pin.
He's lining up that pin, and how can you prevent that? The knight is jumping to c5 to attack the white queen, but the white can pick up the pawn on a7 and continue with the threats. The rook will be coming to the open fight to attack the black queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the rooks, unclear which one it should be. You can make an argument for both rooks here. The black queen will be forced to sidestep, and white will save his dark squared bishop. He doesn't want to trade off that piece. That would be a way for black to get back into the game. So I'm expecting that bishop to maybe just retreat. There we go. And Sava's got to trade off pieces while he can. Two bishops as a pair, too strong. You need to remove at least one of them. And Sava's fighting, Anna. It's not over yet.
It's definitely not over yet, and kudos to Robert for finding some really important defensive moves here, even regardless of losing material. He's down a pawn, and he's up against a very experienced opponent. But this queen trade, at least according to the computer, wasn't the cleanest way. Knight jump now by Robert trying to counterattack. It's an extra pawn in an endgame for Daniil Dubov, and that's diagonal for the bishop. Looking at the promotion square, that's going to be tough to stop the pawn.
Yeah, that's the dream duo, right? Like a bishop on the long diagonal and a passed a pawn promoting in the corner. Yeah, long term, short term, it's totally winning. Dubov is playing very, very cautiously, though. I thought he'd move his king to the square. He retreats his bishop off that diagonal we just praised. He wants to park his bishop on an outpost in front of the pawn. And he thinks that the extra pawn will do the hard work. If all the rooks come off, it's over. Bishop will beat knight, especially with that pawn. But can Sava create any counterplay while the rooks remain?
That's the main question here, yes. And I am surprised too about the cautious play by Daniil Dubov. But he says, you know what, I'm not going to allow any counter chances, and I will later very carefully and slowly start pushing my pass pawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very careful. And yeah, it's interesting seeing Dubov because like he's a tactician, attacker, but it feels like he's evolved into a more mature player, maybe taking less risk, just trying to control games, not giving his opponents any fun, any tactics. It feels like he's using his tactical vision himself, Anna, to neutralize his opponent's tricks rather than to create those kind of magical attacks that we're so used to seeing from him.
It really feels that way. And now he's going to need to face the rook, the black rook, attacking his pawn on b2. If he pushes the pawn, that would be a very natural way to defend, but that will make it harder for you to push then the a pawn, since the b3 pawn will always be hanging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he slowed white down slightly, Sava. And there we see him push a pawn. I was surprised the computer only said +1 for white because it looks completely winning. But now, after this last move, the eval bar rises again. I'm going to try and put myself in the mind of Daniil Dubov. I think he might just move his king, avoid any checks.
I think so. I feel like that was a move on his mind. He brings his rook instead, attacking the black rook. Maybe now he's going to move the king out of harm's way, and that's happening right now.
Exactly. You don't want to allow any checks, just in case. They probably didn't do much, but yeah, typical, especially speed chess wisdom. And Sava's trying to create some counterplay by creating a net around the white king, but still very slow, takes a lot of time.
It does take a lot of time, and Daniil Dubov also has more time on the clock in this game. So a healthy extra pawn in an endgame, more time as well. But kudos to Robert Gabriel Sava for the fighting spirit and finding some really important defensive resources to stay in the game.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, right? If he hadn't blundered just after the opening or, just allowed this tactic, the way he's played, it's so impressive. Maybe he would have been able to hold Dubov in another scenario, but unfortunately that early blunder, now the fact that one set of rooks are off and white's pawn is almost unstoppable, this should be a slow but inevitable.
It is unfortunately the case for Robert that this endgame is incredibly difficult to play, and the evaluation bar screams winning advantage because of the extra pawn, the passed pawn, and now white slowly but surely advancing the pawn, first by activating the rook to target that f7 pawn that David is highlighting. That's a big target in black's camp. And once you tie down the black pieces to the defense on the king side and chase the knight away from c6, then you can start pushing your pawn, the passed pawn, and it's going to be extremely difficult to stay in the game from then on.
Yeah, the only way black can blockade is by putting his knight on the edge of the board, and sooner or later, maybe Dubov's going to offer a rook trade. There we go. I was going to say, this is going to be the scenario where the bishop totally cuts off this poor black knight. It's got 0 moves. And I wouldn't be surprised to see, yeah, there we go. Dubov just activate his king now. He's going to slowly creep over to this side of the board and then try to win that knight, break the blockade. And that should be game over.
That is so instructive how the bishop is completely dominating the black knight that's stuck on the edge of the board. The black king is trying to chase the bishop away, but the bishop moves away by attacking the kingside pawn. The h5 pawn now is going to fall. If you push it, white, by capturing the pawn, will have a new passed pawn on the other side of the board.
Yeah, knights, it's so unfortunate, and a knight struggle, especially against these corner pawns, the A and H pawns, because the knights have to sit passively, only controlling 4 squares instead of the normal 8, where they would in the center. The knights hate it. They ate it. These A and H pawns, nothing to do.
Nothing to do. The knight is a short-range piece, while the bishop has been first dominating on the queen side more so, and the center, and now is off to the king side. That's a very key difference between bishops and knights, the short range and long range that they cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't help when half of your pawns or most of your pawns are on light squares, easy pickings, easy targets for that white bishop. And yeah, Sava here, not much to do. We didn't need to talk about the clock in this game because it was actually on the board that this was settled. He drops his king back. Dubov most likely just defends his pawn before mopping up black's pawns on the other flank. Let's see how he tries to finish this game as efficiently as possible.
That's exactly the move he plays to be ready to move the bishop away. Now the pawn has been sacrificed by pushing it to h4. 2 passed pawns for Daniil Dubov, both on the edge of the board, so the knight cannot make it to both.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and the bishop is hit, so he just needs to find a safe square. He retreats, and yeah, it's what they sometimes call the trousers, or the 2 legs of the trousers. One over on this side, one on the other side, and yeah, no way to contain those pawns. This is it, Anna. We're going to see Dubov clinch his spot in the top 4.
It really feels like, so far, a great form by Daniil Dubov. He is moving on to 5.5 points if he wins this game, and it looks like we are about to see a resignation by Robert that pawn is unstoppable. Robert Gabriel Sava, candidate master from Romania, has done as best as he could, but at the end of the day, so far no one could stop Daniil Dubov, who is wrapping Team Spirit.